What is up, brothers and sisters? We had one heck of a turnaround today in the United States stock market. Let's go over what happened, what caused it, and what's going to happen next. So, look, we had actually, a decent day setting up. We had gap down in the morning, and we had nice follow through, and we were really just trending up the EMAs here. We even looked like we had, a little bit of a flag pattern going. And then, you kind of had some candles that were just hanging. And this is always the key. Watch when the 9 EMA breaks under the 20. That's like kind of your telltale sign, like, let's take the foot off the gas. But what happened was, and it's very interesting, is that, we had a brutal bond auction. And we don't really, these often don't matter that much. But if you look here, worst auction reactions for stocks ever. We had 1.5% in April. And then this one, it's the third, basically number 3 on the 20-year. The interesting part is that nobody ever gives a crap about the 20-year. It's always the 10 and the 30 and, so on and so forth. And this 20-year bond auction, basically, the gist of it was there just wasn't enough demand for the bonds. The reasons for that is that, right, the credit worthiness of the United States with the deficits and so on and so forth, are making people skittish about, right, buying our debt. Will we be able to pay it back? If you notice that Trump's big budget bill looks awful like Biden, he's like, old Trumpster looks pretty much like Biden these days, right? So that's the gist of it. And so the market did not react well to that. And, before you know it, we were off to the races, and we had the waterfall, the waterfall effect. And then look, it even trended. We pulled back to the 9, then we pulled back into the bone zone, right? Which is beautiful action. And then we closed, basically near lows. So the question becomes, what happens next, right? And what do we do? So if we look at an hourly chart, we've come up a long way since the lows about, a month and some change ago. And even in the last so many days, right, since the 12th of May, we've really come up a long way. So if you look here, we're starting to crack on, right, we're starting to crack a little bit on the hourly, and we got a little bit of a bear flag here. So I think the plan for tomorrow, if we just kind of gap up and recapture all of this, then okay. You know what? This was just a one-day event, and you can kind of contribute it to the algos and stuff like that. It happens a lot lately where you have some piece of news and they just, the sell programs or the buy programs turn on and they don't look back. There's not even that kind of stair-stepping action that we're used to. It is just like a straight drive down. And this has been happening a lot, I would say, maybe in the last, couple years specifically. And it's a little bit different than how it used to be. And, every market changes a little bit, but we'll have to be careful of that. Beyond that, I believe we got some, numbers tomorrow at 8:30, and so I think if those come out a little bit nasty, we could come in and potentially get into, this 500. And I think the 500 is what gets probably defended on the Qs. And, that's where I personally would really be interested in possibly looking to long. And man, if we got this thing down over here and we retested this gap area, I think that's a no-brainer. Guys, we've seen the market shake off this kind of stuff quite a bit. We were really extended. And so what happens is people have itchy trigger fingers and you get a piece of news out and this kind of stuff happens, right? And so we're off to the races, and, we've got some ways to come down, as we've come up so much, right? We've just been riding up the 9 EMA for literally a month on the dot. Today's the 21st, right? A month on the dot, we've been riding up the 9 EMA. Let it come back and fill this zone, right? This is your daily chart on the QQQ. Let it come back and fill this area, fill some of this gap. I think that area gets defended on the QQQ. And on the SPY, right, you've got the bone zone here in the 200 days. So somewhere in here, I think would be a really nice spot to come in and let the bulls defend. So, we need a little bit more. Guys, one day doesn't make a pullback. When you're looking for buyable pullbacks that are like really got some juice on it, 2, 3, 4 days are really ideal as long as your MAs hold. So like I still want to see this 20 20 hold. Otherwise, things get a lot more dicey, you know, because if you break under the 200 and you break under the 20, it's like you're putting this rally really in a lot of jeopardy. And, you know, it doesn't matter how you draw these damn lines, right? But, like, you know, you're just breaking down this very, very steep uptrend that we've had. And the IWM got murked today. It looked like it was going to flag. Dude, I almost took some calls on this. I was waiting for it to break 210 to play to the 200. Thank God, right? It would have been expired. But look, I think the IWM you just got to stay away from. The way TLT was acting today, I mean, look at this thing, right? Like, big, nasty breakdown on the TLT. This is your, right? This is your rates. We needed to see this thing go up. Let me see. Oh, there it is. If you look at the 10-year treasury, right? The yields are popping through, guys. This is not what you want to see, right? So we've got to just take a cautious approach to the next handful of days and realize, hey, we're in an uptrend. We are in an uptrend, but these uptrends don't go up, you know, forever, right? You need, when the velocity is this steep, instead of, like, say something like that, then you're going to get some nasty pullbacks, and we want them to get a chance to reload. So I think we kind of chill for a second and just let the land play out. Something to watch for tomorrow. Snow is breaking out of basically kind of multi-year, well, year and a half kind of a range here. Really nice look to it overall, right? So, you know, there's some earnings plays that I think we'll be able to play for tomorrow. ZM had earnings, but not really any reaction to it yet. So we'll see how that reacts. And we're kind of teetering down into it. So what do we do, right, for the coming week? You know, we've got, if we start to break down, right? If the market starts to break down, for example, if Palantir loses this 20, then, you know, I want to play this thing back down, you know, maybe into the 110 or the 100 zone. If the market starts to rip back through, right, then, you know, we'll look for this trend line break, and then we'll kind of play it back that way. So you can kind of play this thing both different ways, right? And we can be mindful of some of these things. You know, you saw some steeper pullbacks in some of these names like TEM. So, like, you know, you have to be careful. Like, this tells you that the risk is off, right? Today, risk was off. And so, you know, if this doesn't hold here, and see how the 9 EMA is starting to crack back. So, like, something like that is like, okay, like, you know, now it's just like a wait and see, right? We've got to, like, take some of these names and take it with a grain of salt. You know, I had this AVGL. We had the 235 calls, added it in the morning. It was doing pretty damn good, right? And just completely reversed. So you have these failed patterns. Now, look, this was only down 1%. So this is something like, right, if the market starts to reverse, then I want to be a part of. Like, it was barely down today, even though a lot of its friends were down a lot more. Like, NVIDIA was down 2x of this, right? Tesla was down quite a bit. So we just want to be a little bit mindful. You know, if you look here, right, Tesla is now, it looked like it was flagging. Now it's teetering, right? If it breaks under the 9, then we can play this thing back down and kind of fill some of this action over here. And, you know, and then we back and fill, and then we can kind of play it back up that way. So you want to be a little bit careful. Like, a lot of stocks need a breather. Look at this Envis. Like, we've been playing this. I had so much of this fucking shit for a swing, and sold it early. Story of my life. But you can see here, you got 2 days with big tails on it. You know, so this is like still a little bit away from the 9 EMA. I want to short something like this. If the market starts to get a little bit nasty, right? I want to take something like this down. You know, like you had a big, I mean, this is, I don't know, you could call this a bearish engulfing candle, right? Like, you know, big reversal on this thing today, right? If it breaks down this low right here, you know, I think we take something like that, and, you know, and we take this piggy down, right? And you can really kind of, you know, you could take any of these stocks and kind of do something like that. On the long side, I think, you know, Amazon, if the market bounces, is also got a good spot here. You got 200 SMA in this trend line break. So there's two things that we have to do here. You're going to need some longs. You're going to need some shorts. But tomorrow's not the day to add any swings. It's a day trade only day, because you need multiple days of pullback before you add swings. So if you're just day trading only, then you need some longs and you need some shorts, right? And so we want to make a list and a wish list of all of this stuff, and it's going to be good. This Webull has earnings out tomorrow, right? I think this may, we'll keep an eye on this, see what happens, or I guess they must have already come out. We'll see kind of what's happening on something like this. Maybe that's in play, right? And so I want to search for news tomorrow, and I want to just kind of go in and say, like, okay, I can short Palantir if it breaks under the 20. I can short, right, Tesla if it breaks under the 9. I can short NBIS on this, I guess they call it like tweezer tops almost, right? And you got to the 9 EMA and then maybe even a little bit more. Some of these high flyers got a lot of room to come down, right? You could see like Hims, big, nasty McGee, right? And then it's also been drifting after hours. Like this, like if you gap up tomorrow, right? We want to short this thing into some levels of, right? Some levels of resistance. Like you gap up here and we come back into these supply zones. We want to take this thing down. So just be flexible tomorrow, right? Remember your levels on the Qs. Remember your levels on the Qs, right? Like we've got some room to back and fill here. And, if tomorrow, the jobs number comes in so perfect and you just get a trend day again, then, if you get this breakout of the flag here, then it's off to the races. And then, we put the target back up to all-time highs. If that doesn't happen, then we need to kind of back and fill this, and it's a good thing. A lot of stocks are extended, and it's nice to have some pullbacks once in a while. So, guys, let's go and do what we have to do. Let's get to work, and let's get a little saucy tomorrow. Peace.